Okay, we have to understand that Abraham had two sons. See, halfway through Abraham's journey, he and Sarah got together and they had this decision that they were going to fulfill the promise of God through their own hands. And he went in to Hagar and he gave birth to Ishmael. Well, as Ishmael grew up, Ishmael began to be in contention with the promise. And Abraham went to God and asked him and said, "What am I supposed to do with this child Ishmael?" And Sarah said, put him out. And he went and God did the unspeakable. He said, "Put him out." But he assured Abraham that because that he was of the seed of Abraham, that he would multiply. That he would multiply and that God would bless him and that he would be in covenant with him. So Ishmael was sent out. They say it says that Hagar, she came from Mount Sinai. I'm guessing they went back out towards Mount Sinai. We don't see the Ishmaelites and all show up again until the Israelites try to get into the land, and there they are. They're always hindering the promise of God because they're living under the law. And Paul tells us that we have to weep and mourn because the children of the bondwoman are far out exceeding the woman of the promise, Sarah. See, Sarah conceived out of supernatural. It was completely supernatural. It was not by anything that her or Abraham had done, but it was God. It was the promise. It was the one. Did God disallow Ishmael because it was not the promise? No, he still blessed him. And see, this is a picture of us under the Torah. See, halfway through this journey, 430 years after there was a promise with Abraham, there was the Torah. Because God had decided he wanted his people to come and he was going to be one on one with them. He was going to be face to face with them. And instead of being face to face with God, they said, "You go talk to him, Moses, and you come back and you tell us what to do." Well, Moses brought back a list of rules. He brought back a list of regulations to create a kingdom. It was a natural kingdom, but it was not the spiritual kingdom. See, we're supposed to be a kingdom of light. This kingdom is nigh and at hand. Even though the Israelites had already built this kingdom, this was the first kingdom. This was the natural. Remember, the Bible always tells you that the former thing is always great. I mean, latter thing is always greater than the former thing. And so we see that this nation of Israel was being born, but it was not the glory thing. This was the natural that was going to be preceding the thing that God is going to do in the spiritual. We have to make sure that we are born of the children of Abraham. Abraham had a promise. He said, "By all your seed, the world would be blessed. All nations would be blessed through your seed." That was the very seed that was going to crush the heel of the enemy. We see that all the way back in Genesis. See, the enemy, when the snake was biting at the heel of the Israelites when they're out in the wilderness, the serpent was lifted up. And Jesus tells Nicodemus, "This is the same thing. You're going to see the same thing, Nicodemus. It's just like the serpent was lifted up in the wilderness." But we have to understand that that was not the promise, and it did not disallow the promise. It was just an added covenant. It was a foreshadowing of the things. But he said to make sure, he even told the Samaritan woman, said, "You won't worship in this hill or in this mountain as your ancestors did, but you will worship him in spirit and truth." And see, spirit and truth, that came from Sarah. And Sarah was a free woman. What she conceived was supernatural. It was born out of due season. It was a child of a promise. And that promise is what we're born out from under. We have to be careful that we are not born again under Sinai. Yes, there's a blessing in it. But we have to be the children of Sarah. We have to be the children of the promise. And the promise was that all nations would be blessed. See, but the problem is, the Bible tells us that we find out that this doctrine of Balaam shows up. See, the doctrine of Balaam is really tricky because everybody says that's preaching for money. But Balaam didn't preach for money. See, Balaam decided that he was going to try to curse the people of God for money. And he couldn't go. And then God told him, he said, "You get up and you can't say anything that I don't say." So he started blessing them. He couldn't do anything but bless. See, the prophet just began to bless them and bless them and bless them. And God said, "Balaam, you can't curse what I call blessed. Let no man call what I call blessed cursed." So what did Balaam do? He went around behind their back and taught their enemies to teach them to curse themselves. Do you know that if you're under the law and you're guilty of one, you're guilty of all? That under the curse, there's blessings and curses. There was two mountains. One of them had life. and one of them had curses. And Moses gave us a cheat sheet, and he said, choose life. Life has a name. His name is Jesus. I'm the way, I'm the truth, and the life. Under life, there's blessings. But see, we have taught the children of God to curse themselves. See, you get yourself up under something and you call yourself sinful. You call yourself separated from God. You damn yourself and separate yourself from God. And you curse your own self. That's the doctrine of Balaam. See, you think you reap what you sow. You think you deserve. And we get out from under this covering. We get out from under the blanket of God. See, He has got us under a wedding canopy. He's got us covered. We are under His covering. But when we call ourselves cursed and we run from God and we tell Him that we are not deserving, that we're no longer children, we become the prodigal sons. We run out and we wallow ourselves. We take our inheritance and we wallow ourselves in the hog pen and then ask God, why did this hog mess get all over me? And He was like, I never told you to leave and go wallow in it. See, we put ourselves out there. We return right back to our own vomit because we're so looking at it and we so are deciding that our feelings and our emotions and our actions are far more than the words of God and are far greater than the promises that we have. And that's not the way it should be. See, we've got to choose to be the children of Abraham. Abraham's children would be blessed. There was no curses in that promise. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Moses said, choose life. Balaam said, come, let me show you how to convince them to curse themselves. You better be careful to the doctrine of Balaam. How many times have you called what God called blessed curse? Whether it was a brother and sister in the Lord or yourself. See, you're not your own either. People are like, I can say what I want to about myself. It's me. No. You don't even belong to yourself. See, when you become a Christian, you're bought with a price, and you don't even belong to yourself. So you cannot judge another man's servant. You can't call what God called blessed cursed. You can't be the one that condemns His servant. See, Paul said, it's a small thing that I'm judged of you. I don't even judge myself. Everything will be judged in its time. But we cannot call ourselves cursed, accursed, separated, dead. We're life. We're light. Quit calling light darkness. Quit calling what God has called good evil. Quit calling what He said's blessed, you, cursed. Beware of the doctrine of Balaam. Beware of the children of Hagar, of the children of Sinai, the children of bondage. See, they had the right to the inheritance, but they were never able to be a partaker. They were blessed because of association. They were blessed because of covenant, but they were never the promise. Be careful in seeking out the promises that you don't go back into legalism. Make sure that you're born of the right spirit.